Hello everyone. So the time of case building is over. We're going directly uh, all the participants. Technocrat B, are you here?
Here.
The siblings for real?
Yup, we are here.
Also C,
Here and complete.
D, Unilabi.
Complete.
And educators, Kak Leila,
Yes, I'm here.
Kak Aldi Pratama,
Here.
Kak Dina,
Yes, I'm here.
Kak Dio,
Here.
Kak Fajar,
Here.
Kak Iqbal,
Here.
Kak Ramade,
Here.
Kak Syagung,
Here.
and Kak Angga.
I'm here.
Yes, welcome to the grand final of IDEA Debate 2020. So to open the debate, we call upon the opening government here.
Check, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. If you guys want to take any POI, just do chat me. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Mr. and Madam Speaker, in the current status quo, having home becoming the most important goals in your life. The problem with having home ownership is that people somehow cannot achieve it. On how right now this having home is somehow unachievable because there are people that cannot afford it. So irrespective that the capability of people in having this home ownership, we want to regret this motion. But do notice, by regretting the dominant narrative, we are not necessarily didn't support people who choose to have home ownership in their life. But what we are regret is the people who currently driven by the dominant narrative that is currently make them feel irrational. So therefore, they will life will suffer. So what do opening government want is the debate is that we want to actually protect people to create betterment, but importantly, guiding people to have happiness by regretting the narrative that home ownership is one the most important goal in your life. Two things in my speech and all of my rebuttal will be intertwined and end. First, why is unjustified to make home ownership as the important goals in life? Let's take a look how then the narrative comes from. I think that the narrative comes from within the society is somehow deep rooted within it. That our ancestor long ago, that your great grandmother keep telling you that the moment your age is 20 or something, you need to move out from your house and you start building new one. I think that this is that no matter how good your capability, no matter how high positions in your company, that the moment you didn't have any house ownership, you simply cannot. Someone who's ancestral. Moreover, right? This what comes from the narrative from 2000 from 100 years ago is somehow unachievable and right now. Yes, maybe houses is currently achievable in 20 years ago. But right now, the moment you want to have a house, the moment you are owning a land or simply building small houses, you need billions of money, billions of dollars. This is very harmful on how then somehow people are, how then certain of people cannot achieve the happiness. On how there is certain people, for example, underprivileged one who currently struggling to just only eat once a day, they are being driven that owning a house is the most important goal in your life. So therefore, under opposition side of the house, I think that what might need to be proved under their side is that how then people underprivileged somehow can achieve it. because of how then, in fact, that they cannot simply gain the happiness that they want. So therefore, they will suffer at the end of the day. So what opening government want in this debate? We want just we want people somehow define their own happiness. That not necessarily being dictated by the mother just only having a house, but also they need to define what is the important goal in life. For example, that you need for you to happy is to winning this competitions. For you to be happy is not get COVID-19, or for you to be happy just simply having a dinner with your friends or circle. Therefore, under this is something that is achievable in comparisons in having home. That you that you just need an extra effort for example, and some extra effort, for example, so that you somehow can achieve it. The comparative under their side of the house is that the moment me winning this competition, if I didn't have a house or owning a house, my trophy will simply be fade away, for example. That people will not acknowledge me, for example. Therefore, under our side of the house, it is very unjustified because of how somehow people happiness is different, and for you to gain happiness is to somehow pursue what you define at what you want. But second of all, what are the harm if you being driven by the dominant narrative? Let's talk about the survivability. I think that what is the most harmful thing if you're being driven with the by the dominant narrative is how then you trying to do any means necessary to owning house, for example. That you need to spend KPR for 20 years, for example. It is likely for you to have a debt in it, that you have any guarantee to somehow pay that in the future. Therefore, we say to you, these people likely to be irrational on how they're being driven by the society. They're being by being driven by society that somehow success is having home, no other than that. Therefore, we say to therefore it says to you, it is therefore we say to you, people who renting a house also be seen as unsuccessful. That these people will seen as poor, for example. But in fact, the people who owning house are somehow in debt for 20 years. This is a rational mindset, Mr. and Madam Speaker, on how then people will acknowledge you just simply you have houses. That this is harmful to individual. Because you will not feel happy. But what is under our side of the house? Things that will happen when we define our own happiness. People tend to be rational. How we say so? Because the irrationality from the people comes from how then they need a calculation what they are going to do in the future. There might be these people do calculations, so therefore they doing that for 20 years. But what is bad from this is that they're living in uncertainty on how then in the future what if there somehow people cannot pay that. But let's also engage these people somehow be productive on how they need to pay their debt for houses. We say this as bad. The productivity that these people trying to do is that how then they do happiness just because for others' sake. That you prioritizing someone's smile and acknowledgement, so therefore your happiness could simply being taken away. So therefore, under our side of the house, we do the money that we use to pay DP for houses is used to actually do pay courses or even saving or even paying some stock for investment in the future. Therefore, under our side of the house, what we envision is people can choose what most important goal in their life and not being driven by only one important that is having ownership. Very proud to open the case of opening government. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. To respond the case, I would like to call the leader of opposition here.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to clarify several things first. Opening government said they want people to be able in defining their happiness. Clarification. No, that's not true, because you can't escape from the current world where you constantly compare one and another. Even if it's true, we said that happiness still should come at a cost, and this cost might be hurting you, but this is important for your future. Opening opposition also stand for the self-fulfillment and productivity. But our goal is we want individuals to be able to contest their own self, to be able to own a house. I am going to bring several contributions to the debate. They are: 1. Why the narrative is important for individual. 2. How life will look like when you have this narrative, whether you can achieve it or not. Moving into my first issue, why the narrative is important for individual. I have several reasons for this one. First reason, this narrative is good from the concept of meritocracy and capitalist society in which we are currently living in. It's about the ability to achieve something. So this is not the only narrative that push you to be productive. Without this narrative, people are still going to compete to find other thing like car, phones, and other form of wealth, right? This is important to show why is it normal. Opposition can only win this debate if they can defend why specifically it should be house narrative that should be toppled down. Second reason, this narrative is used to push individuals to become more productive because owning house becomes one of the prerequisites to get into new step of life. That's marriage. So the question becomes: is it accessible? We say it is because my brother last 2 years buy a house when he was 21 years old. So KPR, there are a lot of subsidy of housing to millennial like from government, and with this individual can buy house that fits them like middle class by cheaper housing and others. This is possible because there's market segmentation. Opposition can only win this debate if they can defend why there's no accessibility to own a house. Third reason, this narrative helps individuals to learn how to invest and spend money in a much more targeted way. Because you constantly need to pay a monthly installment fee, your money allocation will be better. The benefit is you can own a house after KPR is done, and the price is going up better than spending to other things that will decrease its price like luxury item. Proposition can only win this debate if they can defend why spending to other things are way better. Now, our second issue will be how this narrative will be perceived by people. I have several reasons for this one. First reason, this narrative is adjustable. That's why poor people like me and my brother buy house around Magellan, which is relatively cheaper in comparison in housing in Podomoro. So people that is capable in buying subsidized house is still able to buy a house, and you are still accepted anyway. When you are able to buy the house, you will be able to feel more fulfilled, and you will find that your life is meaningful and accomplished. But but how if you can accomplish it? Some people will still be able to rent house, but their hopes remain there alive to make them know what is the reason for them to work so damn hard 24/7. So what are the contribution I have brought in this debate? OG is the only team who have proven to you. OO is the only team who have proven to you. 1. Why narrative is accessible. 2. how everyone can feel more accomplished after achieving the target. My second speaker will also prove to you, 1. How we are going to be able to survive in this toxic world after having this narrative. 2. He will also bring the comparative about the allocation of money and impact to the house developer in economic perspective.
Point.
No, for all those reasons, we are more than proud to oppose the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader of Oppositions. To respond the case, I would like to call the Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. If you guys want to PI me, just hit me through the chat. Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Let's be realistic here, right? For people who have 3 million salary per month in city like big city like Bandung, Lampung, or so on and so forth, for example, it is very hard to can pay KPR in 20 years time, for example. But even more, that dominant narrative makes several people being irrational and do not have calculation. Just like my first speaker already said to you, right? Even worse, to the underprivileged society that will being so irrational, Mr. Madam Chair, and so on and so forth, Mr. Madam Chair. So, but most importantly is that in a macro aspect, that state will be got a lot of harm because this dominant narrative. It is like economic crisis, for example, that happened in US when company think people have this kind of demand to own home. Does it make crisis because company that a lot that bankrupt, that create housing that too much, Mr. Madam Chair, that make crisis in US housing bubble itself, Mr. Madam Chair. So under our side of the house, it will be more exclusive in individual and communal harm. Why we want to regret the dominant narrative that home ownership is one of the most important goals in one's life. So I have two issues here. That first, why under our side of the house it will make betterment for individual and also for the state. And second, why in capitalistic society people more likely to survive under OG world, Mr. Madam Chair. So coming to my first issue. Why under our side of the house it will make betterment for individual and also for state. They say, say this narrative is so important for the individual to become more productive, Mr. Madam Chair. Our response toward this statement is that first, that make that Mr. Madam Chair, that's very important, which is like they want to feed their child or their education and so on and so forth. Ladies and gentlemen, they want to have this kind of better future, better life, and so on and so forth, right? So the disincentivement of productivity under the reset of the house, it's not that exclusive, Mr. Madam Chair. And second, even worse, under the reset of the house, even when they are being productive, only lead to irrationality, Mr. Madam Chair. Why? Because, for example, let's say in this kind of pandemic situation, that they should prioritize it is like health issues and so on and so forth, or maybe and other things, Mr. Madam Chair, that can make them safe and so on and so forth. But instead of prioritize on that, because this kind of dominant narrative, they will like buy a home because they thrive with this dominant narrative. Or another example is, and not like in the pandemic situation, when they're already doing so hard and so on and so forth, they can have this kind of the money that they spend toward this kind of KPR loan that they can use, Mr. Madam Chair, to develop themselves, Mr. Madam Chair, for example, to taking this course, to taking courses, for example, that will develop their career, for example. But they won't do that because this dominant narrative that continues saying to you that you will not be success if you do not have this kind of home ownership, Mr. Madam Chair, which it is very bad, right? Comparatively under our side of the house, what will happen? In this individual level, these people can have rationality, also well calculation, ladies and gentlemen, to achieve their goals. Because we know that this kind of goals of people is diverse, the happiness is diverse. So we think under our side of the house, these people Now, ladies and gentlemen, without this distraction of this kind of dominant narrative, Mr. Madam Chair, under our side of the house, the productivity that they have will lead into well calculation, Mr. Madam Chair. Why? Because the idea of saving happen in both sides of the house, right? Also, idea of investment itself. But the question is that why under OG world it is so much better, Mr. Madam Chair? Because under our side of the house, we have this kind of investment. They will invest in stock, for example, in gold, for example. That is, they know it will having like additional money again for them in the future, Mr. Madam Chair, that they will taking for their betterment, their family betterment, and so on and so forth, Mr. Madam Chair. Comparatively, under their side of the house, that they envision more only this home of ownership, Mr. Madam Chair. They a lot of budget not in their self-development, but only on how this kind of home of ownership, that is the goals of a lot of society, not goals of them as individuals, ladies and gentlemen. Thus, we say under their side of the house, it will more create. No one is it's very hard to people to being happy itself, Mr. Madam Chair, because under their side of the house, the productivity is very bad coming under their side of the house, Mr. Madam Chair. And even more, for the state itself, Mr. Madam Chair, where the dominant narrative when this dominant narrative is accessed in the status quo, and a lot of company that have this kind of demand from the society that want to building house and so on and so forth. So a lot of company that building this kind of KPR home system, Mr. Madam Chair, which is a lot that it is not good, Mr. Madam Chair, for economic in the country itself, Mr. Madam Chair, because it can like create, for example, the recession, for example, because what people focusing only this kind of home ownership system, only this kind of KPR system, Mr. Madam Chair. So we say in a state level, it will very bad because of this kind of dominant narrative, Mr. Madam Chair. That's why we very regret this kind of dominant narrative that home ownership is one of the most important in one life, because it not create the betterment for individual and also for the state, Mr. Madam Chair. So coming to my second issue. Why in this capitalistic society, people more likely to survive under OG world, ladies and gentlemen. They might say that the LO might say that this is this is the only thing that making underprivileged can incentive to have to survive, for example, because of this kind of dominant narrative, Mr. Madam Chair. We think it is not right. It is just make life of this kind of underprivileged worse, Mr. Madam Chair. Because at the end of people, we will have house at house, right? So how will we afford it, Mr. Madam Chair? That we afford it based on their willingness, financial saving, and capability. Therefore, people will be rational under our side of the house, Mr. Madam Chair. Under their side of the house, it will not happen. But before that, yes.
So are you against any form of buying houses or not? Because at the very beginning, you say that buying houses is less important than buying golds, but at the same time, you say that buying houses is allowed.
We think, Mr. Madam Chair, Janata already clearly say to you that it is choice of people, they want to have home or not, Mr. Madam Chair. Both is worse, is dominant narrative that very shifting people rationality, ladies and gentlemen, that they do not have this kind of well calculation in the first place, Mr. Madam Chair. So under their side of the house, it is they don't have this kind of these people do not have this kind of irrationality, right, under their side of the house. So why we slot win in this debate, Mr. Madam Chair, as opening government? That first we already portray to you that that people will be irrational under their side of the house, Mr. Madam Chair. And second, we will make this individual have development better and achieve their happiness, Mr. Madam Chair. Because what happened in status quo right now, they're only focusing in this kind of dominant narrative that very bad for them, Mr. Madam Chair, especially these underprivileged people. We don't say that people who choosing to have this kind of home, but what we say is this kind of underprivileged people that they are not capable, but they're trapped in this kind of dominant narrative. That's why we start win in this debate. So we propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. To respond to the case, I would like to call Deputy Leader of Opposition here.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, wait, yeah. My preferred POI method is through chat box. So if you have any POI, just type in the chat box. I promise I'm going to take your POI. So I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. we are currently living in a world which is quite toxic because you constantly push with a lot of types of narratives. When you are born, you are forced to be able to walk earlier. If you cannot walk earlier, then your parents are going to question and push you and buy kereta dorong for you to play with so you can train your legs, for example. Or you are forced to go to a lot of courses and tuition to ensure that you can get ranked in school, right? I think that in that regards, everyone still have the narratives, but at the same time, you still have the option to choose whether you want to opt in with the narrative or not, right? So the concern of choices also exists under the side of opening a position. People still can choose whether they want to opt into the narrative or not. But most of the time, why then individuals like me who are working 24/7 under the capitalistic system needs this narrative? Because this is the only narratives that makes me alive inside my working place, that keeps giving me a lot of burden, a lot of workload, overstress, that can be used as a coping mechanism for me to think that, oh, at least the reasons as to why I do this is because I need to survive, because I want to buy houses. That's the reasons as to why gold and house is one of the emblem that we want to have to pursue you and keep reminding you that you still have another chapter of your life that you need to follow, that you still have another target that you need to fulfill, right? That's the reasons why it's still possible under our side, right? But even if understanding that we force this narrative, they still can have another goal, right? For example, me, I might be having a lot of KPR needs to be paid for another 10 years, for sure. You can ask my friend Jessica, she's here. But at the same time, I still have my own goal that I want to go abroad, for example, and I'm currently saving my own money. Understanding the fact that my salary is only UMR salary. To notice, so what is the important element of this? This is to prove to you how the current mechanism enable individuals like me to have an access to KPR, which is way cheaper, because current government system of KPR is through the Suku Bank Indonesia, Suku SDBI, for example, because they don't and if you're scared for the fluctuative interest, for example, you can still have the option to opt into Bank Syariah, for example, to get a fixed interest, with your 3 million income, you still can buy the houses, right? But the question is, opening government say, no, you cannot buy houses because it costs billion rupiahs. Judges notice this. You need to understand that there is market segmentations in each field that we are currently living. That is to say that you can buy houses in any places you want. So you need to necessarily understand this narrative will be adjusted. It's just the same case like the reasons why I joined NUDC. I joined NUDC not with the aim to win a main draw category, right? I want to win the novice category. Unfortunately, I broke to the main category. Yeah, I don't have any choice, right? But here is the thing. People will adjust their goal. Powerhouse will adjust their goal to achieve something that is greater. That's the reasons why rich people buy houses in Podomoro, not buy houses in Tembung or Marelan like me, right? So that's the reasons as to why then this narrative is something that you still can adjust and you can access within your daily life, right? So it's impossible for you to buy houses in peak if your salary is only 3 million. You need to buy your houses in satellite city like Tangerang, for example, or Bekasi, for example. I don't know, right? So that's how we adjust that. That's how it mechanized in the world, right? So firstly, how this narrative becomes the only narrative that makes you alive. Understanding that we are currently living in a world that is generated by capitalists, then you are forced to work 24/7, you have work stress overload, you always constantly feel that you're a failure or dumb in the workplace. So this is the narrative that forces you to stay alive, right? So my brother also told you that there is access to buy houses like KPR. You need to understand, under Jokowi regime, before Jokowi regime, like in SBY regime, we are encouraged to buy houses. Why? Because buying houses equals to increasing the economic values in the nations, right? It is equals to adding more economic transactions. I'm going to prove to you later on how this will debunk all the case from opening government when they say, you know, if you have a lot of KPR, then in a sudden you have recessions. That's not how it works, right? Because you need to understand, when you apply for KPR, for example, they're going to evaluate your working place, they're going to evaluate how long have you been working, they're going to evaluate how is your salary, the value of your land, and vice versa. There are a lot of externalities that they value, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean if your salary, for example, not sustainable, if you just enter a job, for example, not less than 2 years, you cannot directly be accepted to apply for KPR, at least you need to work for 2 years. That shows that you're going to work in a long term in that company and you have a sustainable income, right? They ask for your transaksi reckoning and vice versa to ensure that there is a safety net upon your ability in paying the debt, right? Even to the extent that there is certain percentages of your salary and that becomes the maximum standard or net for you to get a loan. For example, your installment fee must not exceed 50% of your salary and vice versa. I think that this is very important for you to notice, right? This is to prove how accessible it is right now. But even if understanding the fact that there are people who fail to buy houses like by debt, right? I understand that as well. But what makes that my dad keeps alive, for example, until now? Because this dream is something that you can inherit day by day, or at least because you know that you want to buy houses and you still have hopes that in the future you can buy houses, you will still keep saving your money. You're not going to be over consumptive over things that you can buy, right? This is why then Sandi arguments matter, because he told you clearly that this will help individual in creating a strategic allocations of money that they get daily, right? That they get monthly, like, so what is the utility of owning this money and how to strategically allocate this money? This is also to answer the concern of opening government. How if there is a recession, you don't have enough money? No, necessarily, if you have recession and you still have KPR, you have the option to only pay for the bunga, the interest. That is the options of during pandemic that they also offer me, right? But second of all, because you not yet buy the house, but you already have the saving, this money can be used for you to sustain your life and to make sure that you can still alive, right, in the next day, right? So understanding in the side of opening government, when people are not going to be forced to buy houses, what are the things that they are going to fight for? They're going to fight for more luxurious things like cars. We say that this is a very bad form of investment. As to why? Because car prices goes down and degrade, while house prices is equals to gold prices that keeps increasing day by day. So this is a safety net for you when you retire already. You at least have a shelter to play, a shelter to live in. You at least have a place to stay, and you can have a chit chat with your grandchild, like what you want to do, right? So opening opposition is more than proud to oppose.
Thank you, Deputy Leader of Oppositions. To open the case of closing bench, I would like to call the member of government here.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Start my speech in three. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much, opening opposition, for the introduction on KPR and how accessible it is. CG will enter this debate, getting out of the deadlock of accessibility or not, because we might concede that yes, some people cannot access that because of their fluctuative spending, while some people can access that where they're like Randy and really hardworking and really save their money. On our side of the house, we're not going to talk about accessibility. Sorry for that. We're going to prove to you why then not having this narrative is a lot more important for individuals who want to define happiness by themselves, right? So bypassing the accessibility. So even if an individual owns a ton of money, if they don't want to opt into buying a house and own a house and want to travel the world and not be locked down or jailed and in one certain condition to pay repairs for their house or look after their house, for example, we think that is fine, that it is their choice. There shouldn't be a predominant narrative that locks them down into thinking that a house is the most important goal that they need. 3 responses towards opening opposition. Firstly, they talk to you that, this is a goal to make individuals continue working harder so that they can face the stress that capitalism life forces onto them. We think that, 1, the idea of this being your goal means that when you finish work and you drive home to your house and you realize that, oh, this is either a rented house or you still live with your parents, you suddenly are hit with the idea that I've been working for so long, but I've done nothing with my money. I'm still a waste of space living with my parents or either renting a house, which means that it demotivates you, because only individuals who are lucky enough, like Randy, who are so strict, who are so good in saving money, can actually feel fulfillment from actually putting that money into KPR, right? For example, this is why the idea of motivation should not work in that spectrum, right? I think that motivation should be there regardless. That when you come out of your work, for example, and you drive home to your parents' house, or you drive into a rented house, you still feel happy that there's a shelter over your head. You still feel happy that you're with your parents in that house, right? Not thinking that you're a failure because you cannot afford a house yet. I've been working for 2 years, Randy. I haven't paid a KPR. Am I a failure? I don't think so, right? I don't want to see my life in that way. But then the second thing that they come up to you and say is that the idea of this is you want to adjust your goal. You want to focus on a certain goal and you want to fight towards it, right? Which means you'll make your life focus on paying this house. This is exactly why this is something that is wrong, right? Which means you will limit yourself from buying things that actually make you happy, right? On our side, notice that we're not going to pay into the idea of, investing in gold or investing in stocks to make money, because that is very problematic. Opening government, you might lose your money if the market fails, right? On our side, we allow individuals to buy whatever they actually want, right? Look, Randy's quite inconsistent when he says, yeah, we want people to opt in, thank you, to opt into things or not. On their side, they can't have the choice to choose for it because this dominant narrative exists in society, which means that when you come home from your job and you live with your mom will ask, so when you're gonna buy a house? Your girlfriend will probably ask, oh, if we can't marry first, you have to buy a house so that we can marry. Or your father will tell you, so what, son, can you afford the house yet? We think that you don't have a choice regardless, right? Because this narrative exists in society and everyone pushes individuals to buy a house. This is why in Indonesia, if you can't afford a house, people will question, what have you been doing with the money you've earned from your work, right? Because exactly this is a goal and individuals cannot choose or not to opt into it, which is why on our side, we don't want this narrative, so individuals can define what they actually want with their life. Do they want to have day-to-day happiness? So for example, they spend their money each and every day on alcohol, for example. That's something that is fine. We don't want them to be, boarded down by this idea of having this goal that they should fight for. My extension will be on why then sustainability and security is not something that we should focus on. And the third to their side of house is the idea that they come up here and tell you why then this specifically ownership is something that is good, because it actually gives you security for the future. It's something that you own, and when you pay it off, you'll feel very happy that you've been able to pay it off, right? We think that yes, okay, you might feel happy that you've been able to pay it off, but that's not a reason why then you should force all individuals around the world to buy into that idea of investing in a house as something that is the most important goal. We believe that if they want to invest in any other things that exist in the world, if they want to be a freelancer and travel all over the world without being stuck down in one entire house, that should be their right and they should be allowed to do that, right? Opposition, if they want to take this debate, they must prove to you why then buying a house is very important for each individual to define their happiness, because happiness comes in droves, right? We're not going to agree with what OG said about small happiness. We think that happiness can be there too, right? For example, you're a globe tracker and you travel the entire world in search of, finding beautiful destinations and not being boarded down into one certain destination, right? So for example, this weekend you're in Bali, next weekend you're in some other country in the world. We think that is fine. Open your eyes, I will not accept them. But then what is my extension? One, the idea of security and sustainability. We think that the idea why this kind of thing is actually bad is because it's embedded into every individual's mind that only with a house can you have security, that only with a house have you actually done something with your life. Why is this then harmful, right? We think that individuals come in many characteristics, which means that with this progressive of millennia, with individuals that are more open to traveling, because notice in this globalization era, the world is more open to us than not, right? We have planes to travel everywhere and whatnot, right? Back in the day, you should have owned land because most likely you will only stay in that area and that land represented your freedom, which means you could get money from that land, right? Notice in status quo, that's not definitely it. We think that individuals can travel all around the world and still make money, right? Notice this is what models are actually doing. We think that, yeah, models probably do buy houses, but that's because they can afford it, right? They probably sell it each and every other day of the week and then change and buy a new house. We think that for individuals that don't have that liberty and that much money, but still want to chase those dreams, it should be fine for them to define what they actually want with life, right? Because out there's a large scope of the world that you want to explore. We don't think you want to be tied down in Tembung or Malrelan, Randy. You haven't even seen the world. What probably exists out there could probably be a lot better. Which is why on our side, we open two scenarios, right? One, for individuals that want to travel the world and not be jailed down, then it's fine for them to actually express what happiness means. But then secondly, for individuals who can only afford to rent, we think that's fine too. Because notice that in one of their biggest contention, we want to teach people how to save money so they can budget for their life. Renting will still teach this, right? Basically, renting means you have to pay a fixed sum each and every end of the year, which means that, yeah, you will still budget to actually fulfill goals of this renting, right? Which means that's not something that's exclusive on their side house. But what is actually exclusive in CG? One, we don't talk about accessibility because it might somewhat be accessible, but we talk about why then, even if it's accessible for an individual, why can they make a choice based on their own happiness? We also talk to you why, secondly, the idea that Randy actually framed that you have a choice does not exist because society is scrutinized all around it, especially in Indonesia, for example, right? Especially in a capitalist world, where people keep on telling you that buying a house is the best investment. How would if I said, I don't want to buy a house? I don't want to invest in that. I want to invest in myself, being able to see the many different beautiful places in the world, right? Notice we're playing on an even rich case where even if an individual was that rich, they would still not be good to opt into those kinds of things, right? So on CG, you can actually define what basic happiness you want, because even if you waste your life and have no security, that's fine, as long as you die happy, right? We don't focus in the idea of OG of trying to gain more security from other things, because basically a house is the safest asset. They must face that. But one other side, even if it's a safe asset, it's still fine. Individuals can define their happiness. Vote for CG. Thank you.
Well, thank you, member of government. To after the case, I would like to call the member of opposition. Here.
Check, am I audible?
Yes.
Something. All right. If you have any I just write in the chat box, and I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Before going into my substantive, I have several clarification. First of all, this narrative not push you directly to have earlier with huge price of home, for example. But second, this narrative also will not force you to live in a certain place only, but you are able to live in the place that you want, for example, but still with the home ownership in itself. Lastly, this narrative not intervenes your happiness. You still able to do what you want at the very first place, but this narrative such a reminder if home ownership is something that really important for your future, because currently there is the selfishness of people that think that this is not the most important. Second, there's also the people that come from the unprivileged people that they think that less hope for them, less opportunity for them to have this home at the very first place. Therefore, this narrative appear to solve the problem that exists in status quo. All of the problem of government about the accessibility, for example, about on how this will intervene the happiness of individual. We don't think that this is can fly in the debate. Opening opposition talk that this is important for to motivate the individual and talking about how the accessibility toward this home ownership, but they never prove to you why in the status quo this narrative run well, why even if there's the pressure and judgment toward the individual that cannot fit in toward this narrative, why that's still okay. And lastly, why having the home to the extent why having home ownership earlier, why this is important and why this is beneficial for individual. Therefore, CEO take this debate. All of the rebuttal intertwine my speech. There are three things that I'm going to talk. First, what is the function of this narrative at the beginning and why this narrative run well based on that function. The problem in the past with adult individual is that too. First, in adult situation, you there in the irrational minded, right? You easily to get the influence by another individual, by your friend, for example. You easily to follow the trends that currently rise in the media, that currently rise inside of your environment can post, for example. This is the reason why people or the adult tend to enjoy their life by having fun with their friend, holiday with their friends and so far, and spend a lot of money toward not important things at all. Why is that likely? First of all, they think that their parents will always support themselves along of their life. Second, they will get home from their parents or simply they can live within their parents' home. Second, people in current status quo focus on pursuing a lot of dreams, but they forget about the most important things for their future destiny, which is the home in itself, right? This is the reason why this narrative appears in order to remind, in order to remember and encourage this individual that look, this home ownership is something that really important for your life. So you need to have this home ownership at the very first place. But let's see how this narrative works in the status quo. First of all, society or parents will encourage you to have best preparation at the very first place. It doesn't necessarily mean your parents will directly push to you to having or to buy home, for example, when you're in 15 years old. Meanwhile, you're still in the junior high school, or even in the senior high school and stuff, right? What your parents or society encourage you is that focus on the education, pursuing career, saving a lot of money to buy this home, for example, at the very first place. That is the narrative word in the status quo. Second, society will not directly force you to have home with the 10 billion price, for example, because I think that this is the case of OG that cannot be counted in this debate, right? Because I think society understand your choices, society understand your capability at the very first place. Hence, regardless what is your type of home, at the end of the day, we don't think that this is problematic inside of the status quo in itself, right? We concede there is a pressure, we concede there is the judgment from the society that when you cannot fit toward this narrative. But why this is okay? For reason. First, I think that at the end of the day, all of the benefit will come toward yourself, not toward another individual. So I think that the moment this is come toward yourself, we don't think that this is problematic, and we think that this pressure is worth it. Second, we think that this pressure will only work toward the temporary times, because the more you can evaluate yourself, the more you can fit in this narrative. We don't think that the pressure will also come toward yourself at the end of the day. Thirdly, I think that pressure is something that normal in status quo, because we cannot say that every individual will free from the pressure. Even you work or you learn in the campus, for example, you will still get the pressure from your lecture and so on so far. But lastly, I think that the judgment will lead into the self-evaluation that will link into best preparation and repair yourself to fit toward in this narrative and buying the home in itself. Therefore, we think the function of this narrative in the status quo is really run well. We don't really does the harm. Therefore, we cannot regret this narrative. Second, why to the extent having the home ownership earlier is something that really important, because of three reasons. First, the moment you old, we think that this is for the future investment for the moment you becoming old in itself, right? Understanding that the characteristic of old people is that first, you less of the capability, you less of the strength and power to work, for example, to go to the office and so on and so forth. But second, in the old process, for example, you will less the income in itself in comparison the more you as adult people that have strong power to go to work, they also have a strong capability to having a settled income at the very first place. Hence, it is important for you to put home ownership as your prioritize at the very first place, because future you need home as your place to take a rest, for example, to build or to keep within your family, within your child, for example, and so far. But second reason, the price will always change and even increase, right? We can see that price in status quo tend to expensive, but what you need to understand, it will always increase at the end of the day and harm this individual and stuff at the end of the day. Therefore, there is no best preparation for this individual. Why is that the case? Because two reasons. First, the increasing demand of the society within home will always increase. Second, the limited land that there in a certain country will also become the parameter of the expensive cost that also will going to be happen. When you postpone and there is no this narrative, in the future, it even hard for you to access this kind of the home in itself. Meanwhile, you ask the unprivileged people doesn't have a good preparation. We don't think that you can access this home at the end of the day. Lastly, the huge number of demand and the limited land will lead into hard to have this ownership. What will be happen? First, you will depend on your parents' home. You will depend on your parents. Why this is bad? Because first of all, you will have a lot of burden with your family, because currently you're not only living with your wife, for example, but you live within your grandpa. You live within your parents, for example. That's to say you will keep this burden toward yourself and all of burden toward yourself. We don't think this is favorable for us to do that, because we don't think that this individual have this capacity. Second, there is no health place for this individual to live, for example, because currently there's a lot of intervention from their parents because you live under one place. Second, the moment you're living with the rent, for example, like what CG talking about, with it, the price will always expensive and you are not able to fit in along of the world. Therefore, this is important for you to do this. What is the benefit under CEO? First of all, we are going to increase the standard of living of the society that will benefit for the economic of the nation, because at the end of the society will have the high standard of living to having a home, for example, and within that is the time we contribute to the government, decrease the government. From this reason, we don't know why CO cannot champion in this debate.
Thank you, member of opposition. To close the case of closing government, I call upon the government whip here.
Am I audible? Sorry, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Oh, okay, thank you, Kak. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Both of the opposition side of the house, they play in their best case on how that when you have your when you have this narrative that is the most important goal in this life to have pursue the home ownership, it is become the show you how successful you are and how productive you are. We say to you, this is this is not the main parameter of the people should life, right? So this is the thing that what happen if we stick in this narrative, it will become the impactful to our society. We say to you that what yes, that pressure happen like what the opposition side of the house we say to you, but the problem the other problem is this narrative create the parameter on how this dominant narrative already believed by the majority people, and also the people already create this standardization on how that the most precise thing to they should pursue in this life. We say to you the goal of there are a lot of goal to a lot of goal that that human itself want to achieve. It is not doesn't necessary to have only have house, ladies and gentlemen. Like my first speaker already told you, he already tell you clearly on that our goal in this life, it is not only this home ownership, but we believe on our freedom, our own freedom to create our own happiness at the end of the day when you want to choose. We say to you like what come from the idea of productivity, like from the opening opposition said already told to you. We say the parameter of productivity is still not clear mentioned in their side. We say to you that become productivity doesn't mean that you should do good in your in the capitalistic capitalistic world. Why? We say to you there are some person that have their own goal to pursue in this life, like do service, for example, like do the volunteer, for example. So they go to everywhere they want to go without having home. And also, like in the Catholic people, like pastor or sister in the Catholic, they don't pursue about the capitalistic productivity, pursue about the service productivity. And this is the thing that we and this is the thing that we come back on how that the majority believe that, oh, why you choose this? Is it you become the happy? Do you become happy because of this? This is the thing that parameter become the toxic about the productivity, right? So this is the thing that lack from the lack analysis from the about of the opposition side of the house. And also on how that the closing opposition already told to us that this will become one motivation to the person on how that on how you should pursue your life. We say to you, yes, it will become the motivation to you on how we live in the capitalistic world, that notice competition really really important, right? Problem is on how this narrative the to the people it is become the toxic at the end of the day. We say to you, it doesn't necessarily when you have your own house, it is already fulfill all the goal of your life. We say to you, the closing opposition, you should prove to us that in your side you should in your side you can prove that when you have the home ownership, you already fulfill the important the main goal in your life, that all people already happy, ladies and gentlemen. We don't say that it doesn't necessarily to make all people happy when they have this house. And also we say to you, doesn't necessary motivation doesn't exist in our side when we regret this this motion, right? Because motivation also exists in our side on how that the first of all this motivation exists on how the happiness in this life. We believe that we as the human creature, we also become the logic person and become the realistic people. And you notice that it doesn't necessarily that you don't do nothing to pursue your career, or you don't do nothing to pursue the thing that you want to ladies and gentlemen. And also notice notice this narrative. This narrative that we should pursue that the home ownership to make our life is become like more productivity, or like it become the more the thing that become the prestige. Notice that yes, you already have the home ownership. That how about the comparatively of the people that don't have they don't have house? At the end of the day, they will have the judgment from the society on how this parameter become the main parameter. We don't like this narrative because it is become the main narrative, ladies and gentlemen. We say we say to you the analysis of actor here. The most important thing that the people as the individual that have their own freedom to choose anything they want without any parameter of the parameter on how this parameter control of the people. You should have house, or even like you when you have the family itself, you force your family that you should have house, or even your relative, for example, you will do judgment to them when they don't have house. This is the thing basically become the best thing. We say to you, even if in the good way of productivity, like the service, for example, this is basically become the good thing to do as the human creature, on how that like the pastor or sister to do service to the society, ladies and gentlemen. But at the end of the day, the society doesn't look like appreciate all the things that the people do the service to the society. But the thing is that this has become the own like happiness, the own happiness, or like the individual happiness to pursue at the end of the day. So basically the thing that the thing that when we have to pursue the life as the humanity, yes, as humanity, you have your self-love, you want to create prestige that want remind you on how you have many assets, for example, but doesn't necessarily this thing should pursue by this narrative. So that's why I'm very, very proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Government Whip. To close the whole debate, I call upon the opposition whip.
Check, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, setting my timer. I'm going to start my speech in 3. Suffers in your young age, is it okay, Eju? Because that is the cost to pursue capitalism and survivability in the long term, right? Having a home is a part of long-term investment, and this is part of long-term happiness for your future journey at the end of the day. Not this, that burden and stress moment, it is okay because it's temporary. When you are back to great performance after refreshing, for example, your life will be back to good performance again to face the capitalism for your survivability at the end of the day. The biggest question that the entire government bench need to prove to you is that why young people, or is that why people or even young adults having willingness to have a home the moment they don't prioritize this thing, right? The moment they feel the comfort zone with their own condition in the young age as a penghuni kosan, for example, why it is still okay for their long-term journey is not clear till the end of their speech. But secondly, they also need to prove to you why spend much money for your temporary happiness only, like go to abroad only or buying a car only, should be prioritized in long-term happiness. Because I think it just tertiary needed, Eju, comparison under the house, that home is the primary needed, which it is very useful for you in the long journey to survivability and also to happiness, like carrying your son in your own home at the end of the day. I'm going to prove you two things. Number one, I'm going to talk about the irrationality. They're trying to claim that under the entire opposition bench, people are going to be irrational at the end of the day. No, right? Because why? Because this narrative will trigger every individual to be more rational with the reality in the capitalism, like home expenses as always increase, that you need to invest in young age, you need to put the effort to work since you are graduate from your college at the end of the day. Because when you being old, for example, it is very hard for you to pay the home or even apartment rent the moment you are weak and do not have passive income at the end of the day. This is the case that will going to be happen under the entire government bench, because people will not have good preparation for investment of their survivability at the end of the day. Secondly, they're trying to say that under the Has, it will not it's not going to be justice for unprivileged people to having a home. Number one, please not assume that this nominal narrative not push individuals to having a huge home like Bill Gates' home in one night, right? This narrative is that support individuals to realize on capitalism, that you need to put your effort right now. You need to invest for your long-term journey at the end of the day. If you have small home that appropriate with your economical background like KPR home and such, it is very okay, right? Because why? It is okay as long as those kind of people being independent and comfort with their home at the end of the day, right? Notice that there will be no judgment when you have small home at the end of the day. Because why? Because your parents or even your society has see your effort with good output, like having home in 25 in 25 age, for example. This is becoming the reason why there is no burden at all in our side of the house. In the worst case scenario, the moment they are fail to fulfill this narrative, it's okay. Why? Number one, they has tried their best in the good track record, ladies and gentlemen, so they will not regret their past effort to live, to survive in the old age at the end of the day. Because the regretful moment will happen under this other house, the moment you are becoming old, but you still stay in your parents' home, for example, with 3 generations of family at the end of the day. So these people, so under the Has, these people will more enjoying their life at the end of the day, right? Because there is no regretful moment at all. This is what happened in status quo. Right? But at least by this narrative, there is a dream by certain type of unprivileged people in the very first time, right? There is an effort that they need to, they want to push their performance to fulfill this narrative at the end of the day. This narrative will motivate themselves even more for the moment they are poor, for example. Because why? Because they need to make sure that look the world, I can following your narrative at the end of the day, right? People will tend to be motivated by this narrative at the end of the day. What is the comparison under our Sadahas? Under our Sadahas, first, people still have dream by this narrative at all. So they will start from 0 point, for example, like invest in share market, buying BRI Syariah share, for example. The moment your money enough, you can buying a home, for example, and it is for justice. Because why? Because you has invest in the long term, and the moment you are ready, so you can buy a home with your money at the end of the day. But even if that you are credit the home, it's okay. Because why? Because the motivation will always happen. For example, that you need to pay your credit in the first time of month, and so on and so forth. This is becoming the reason why there is no problem in our side of the house, right? But secondly, I'm going to prove to you how the standard of living will very beneficial for the people who live in the gray area, or even us unprivileged people. I think under the house, those kind of people will cut their poor cycles that like live in the rent house of big family, for example, like 3 generations of family, right? Indirectly, this narrative also impactful to cut the macroeconomical problem, because you will have better circumstances to boost your performance like good good neighbor the moment you have a home, for example. Compare you only live in this gray area that tend to be poor at the end of the day. You also will have a security of life, because another primary need like food is not too expensive and you can afford it later, right? Even if you are out, for example, there is very simple for you to get food even by your neighbor, or even with work in the little hours at the end of the day. But home is not but notice that home price as always increase, so it's impossible for you to afford it when you are becoming old people at the end of the day. I think happiness will more likely to happen under our sadhas in the long journey, because the moment you are old, you don't need to fear so much to pay the home rent, right? You can gather with your child also in the futures in your new home. In the sadhas, I think in one home, there is more than 3 generations in small home. It's not something that we need to continue. Even you can buy luxury car, for example, but it is just part of irrationality because you're following the trend at the end of the day. So I think the moment you are, I think it's better to stay under the house, because why? Because the output for long-term journey will always increase under the house, right? We're very proud to oppose.
Well, thank you everyone for the debate. So please wait. We are going to allocate the adjudicators to the breakout room to discuss first. Thank you.